Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about one of the 7 stanchions that separate it from D&D then and D&D copy. So D&D now, the current version of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, is really arriving. There are a lot of people saying, hey man, this thing is winning, and it is winning hard, and it is defining the entire industry. I've been saying that for a while, but a lot of people are joining me and recognizing this. And Professor Dungeon Master, there's a link below to the video. He just breaks it down in a video, and he's like, there's 6 reasons that Dungeons & Dragons is defeating every other game on the industry, right? And I break them into D&D then and D&D copy, right? And actually, there's a bunch of tabletop role-playing games that aren't D&D then and aren't D&D copy, and they've mattered even less than D&D then and D&D copy, right? Like they're not even on the board. Like they got 1% of the market if they're lucky, right? There's a ton of them. There's just an absolute ton of them, right? And so today I want to talk about one of these stanchions. And actually, so I split it. So Dungeon Master from Dungeon Craft splits it into 6. I split it into 7. And today I want to talk about Critical Role, right? Critical Role is, and so basically Professor Dungeon Master from Dungeon Craft said, one of the reasons why D&D 5e is king of the industry is Critical Role on YouTube. I'm going to set it out. I'm just going to pull out Critical Role. Critical Role is completely unprecedented in any tabletop role-playing game. And frankly, I think they're fairly unprecedented in almost any other industry, right? And basically, Matthew Mercer just hit like a comet. And I think he's been doing his thing for about 6 or 7 years now. And the reality is, and basically, his game is untouched anywhere in the world. There's no other stream D&D game that has even that. He came up. They have well over 1,000 hours of content across all 3 of the. So it's Bell's Hells, Vox Machina, and Mighty Nine. Between them, I think they might have 2,000 or 3,000 hours of content that is just web-based, right, and podcast-based. Then, in addition to that, there are summaries. There's multiple people who do summaries of the episodes and of the and it's hard to even watch through the summaries, right? There's so many, right? And then in addition to that, you have Legends of Vox Machina, which is again just like there is literally no tabletop role-playing game in the world that has its own animated show other than Dungeons and Dragons, right? There is one tabletop role-playing game that has a show about it. It was called it was based on Tales from the Loop. Tales from the Loop has its own show. It is absolutely horrendous. I couldn't even finish it. It was so bad, right? It's just terrible show. Just completely unwatchable. Nice try, points for trying because it's in the tabletop role-playing game space, but it's just horrendously bad, right? And it's just, it makes so many mistakes, right? There's so few tabletop role-playing game shows that you're like, please don't suck. And they do this story, and they're like, 3% of the people in the world will have any interest in this story based on 6 different things, right? And they're like, we're just doing everything we can to make sure that this will never have a mainstream audience, right? They just work so hard at it and succeed so well to make sure that it's just the most niche show ever. And then they're like, we made sure that it has a super small audience. Now let's make them all sad. And you're like, why are you doing this? It's just like, oh man. But Legends of Vox Machina has been huge, and it seems to be extremely successful, right? And so just Matthew Mercer, to me, Critical Role is Matthew Mercer. If you pull Matthew Mercer out, Critical Role's done. If you take Matthew Mercer anywhere and slap 2 more words on him, that's going to be the thing. And Critical Role will die on the vine within a year, in my opinion. This is my take, right? So Critical Role is Matthew Mercer, and Matthew Mercer is just unprecedented in humanity in what he's been able to accomplish in one industry that he doesn't own, right? He is far surpassing the marketing branch, a paid marketing branch with no less than 3 people on it. He has virtually destroyed every single thing they've accomplished. He's surpassed it, right? And can you imagine being on the D&D marketing team and being like, we pay you to do this job. Why do you suck at it so bad? comparatively to this one dude who's not even paid by us, right? It'd be rough. It would be rough, right? And Mercer, he is an unprecedented human, right? Like, so not only is he outrageously talented as a voice actor, he is the best dungeon master in the world. And then there's just these super weird things that happen. He drew a picture, right? And just shared it on the internet, and somebody took a picture of his picture that he drew, and people lost their minds on Twitter, right? And they were like, what the heck? He is a skilled visual artist. Like, not just good, but great. Like, really good, like people be like, oh, I have kids who are very skilled with art, and everybody's like, you should become an artist. And we're all like, well, they're highly skillful math people, which people will pay for. Like, like, it was like, I don't know, but people lost their minds because he's a skilled visual artist, which has nothing to do with anything he's succeeding in. It's just this pile of talent that's poured onto this person, right? And he's ours. He's D&D 5e's, right? He's not OSC's. He's not, Knave 2nd edition. He's not DCC. They don't have any analog to him. None. Like, and not only is he's not like adjacent to D&D. He literally has a D&D now setting, Exandria, that's being built out and is spectacularly good, right? Like, so, Critical Role is massively important on why D&D just virtually destroys D&D then and D&D copy and makes them not matter. Like, play them in your 49% block, but do not dare make them your main thing, because you are going to suffer for it, and your players will suffer. That's my take. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.